For all of human history, one thing has never failed us: the sun. Empires rise and fall, civilizations collapse, kings are crowned and executed, but every single morning the sun rises, except once. In the year 536 AD, it didn't. At first, nobody noticed anything unusual. Dawn came just like always. Birds sang, people woke, farmers walked into their fields. But something was wrong. The light was dim, not cloudy, not stormy, just weak. The sun looked pale, as if someone had drained its strength. Its glow resembled moonlight more than daylight. People assumed it was temporary, a strange fog, a passing haze, perhaps smoke from distant fires. But the sky did not clear. Days passed, then weeks, then months. The sun remained trapped behind a strange gray veil that stretched across the sky like a curtain over the world. Across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, witnesses described the same terrifying sight. Ancient writers who never met each other, living thousands of miles apart, recorded identical observations. A Roman historian wrote that the sun gave light without brightness. A Byzantine chronicler said shadows disappeared at noon. Chinese records described summer snow and deadly frost. Different civilizations, different languages, same nightmare. And then came the cold. Temperatures dropped suddenly across the northern hemisphere. Summers felt like winter. Crops stopped growing. Harvests failed. Fields that once fed villages turned brown and lifeless. Fruit rotted before ripening. Grain refused to sprout. Livestock weakened. Rivers froze early. Modern scientists estimate global temperatures fell by as much as 2.5 degrees Celsius, enough to devastate agriculture worldwide. To modern ears, that number sounds small. To ancient farmers, it was a death sentence. Food became scarce, prices soared, hunger spread. Families began abandoning their homes in search of food. Entire communities migrated desperately, hoping to find land where crops still grew. Most never did. Famine tightened its grip. Parents starved so their children could eat. Children starved anyway. Historians believe millions died during these years of darkness and cold. But what terrified people most was not the hunger, it was the sky, because it didn't change. Day after day, the same gray sun stared down at them like a dying eye. No one knew why, no one knew how long it would last. Some believed the gods were angry, others believed demons had swallowed the sun. Many thought the apocalypse had begun. Imagine living in a world where daylight looks like permanent dusk. Imagine never seeing a bright sky again. That was life in 536, and it lasted not for days, not for weeks, but for 18 months, a year and a half without true sunlight. Civilization began to fracture under the strain. Trade routes collapsed as merchants refused to travel through starving lands. Armies weakened from lack of food. Governments lost authority. Kingdoms struggled to maintain order. History rarely records the sound of society breaking. But in 536, it must have been deafening. And then, just when humanity thought the worst had passed, something far more horrifying arrived. 5 years later, in 541 AD, ships sailing into Mediterranean ports carried an invisible killer. At first it seemed like an ordinary illness: fever, fatigue, headache. Then came the swellings. Painful black lumps appeared on victims' bodies, under arms, along necks, across thighs. Within days, death followed. This was the Justinian plague, one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. It spread like wildfire across continents, killing between 30 and 50 million people, possibly half the population of entire regions. Cities turned into graveyards. In Constantinople alone, historical records say as many as 10,000 people died every day at the height of the outbreak. Gravediggers couldn't keep up. Bodies were stacked in houses, piled in streets, loaded onto carts, dumped into mass graves. Some towns became completely silent, not peaceful silence, empty silence, the silence of a world where life had stopped. To those living through it, the pattern felt unmistakable. First the sun dimmed, then the cold came, then famine, then plague. It felt like a sequence, as if something unseen had decided humanity had existed long enough. For centuries, this terrifying chain of events remained a mystery. Historians debated endlessly. What could darken the sun for nearly 2 years? Was it divine punishment, a comet strike, a cosmic dust cloud, or something far more earthly and far more dangerous? The answer would not come from ancient books. It would come from ice. More than 1,000 years later, scientists drilled deep into the frozen ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica. Layer by layer, these glaciers preserved tiny particles from Earth's past, like a time capsule of the atmosphere, inside ice layers dated precisely to the year 536. Scientists found something extraordinary: microscopic shards of volcanic glass, volcanic ash, and not just a little, huge amounts. Enough to prove that around 536 AD, Earth experienced one, or possibly several, massive volcanic eruptions powerful enough to blast ash high into the stratosphere. Once ash reaches that altitude, winds can spread it across the entire planet, and that ash acts like a shield, blocking sunlight. The sun didn't disappear in 536, Earth hid it. Researchers now believe one of the eruptions may have occurred in Iceland, one of the most volcanically active regions on Earth. Another may have taken place somewhere in North America. Together, these eruptions triggered what scientists call a volcanic winter, one of the most destructive natural phenomena possible. Because unlike earthquakes or floods, volcanic winters don't destroy just one region. They damage the entire world. Sunlight fades, temperatures drop, crops fail, ecosystems collapse, food chains break, societies weaken. In other words, a volcanic winter doesn't just kill people, it destabilizes civilization itself. And historians now believe that is exactly what happened after 536. Some researchers argue that this catastrophe helped trigger massive migrations, political instability, economic collapse, and even the weakening of empires that once seemed invincible. It may have shaped the course of the medieval world more than any war or ruler ever did, because wars affect nations, but global disasters affect humanity. And here is the most chilling truth of all. Events like this can happen again. Volcanoes still exist, super eruptions are still possible, and Earth's atmosphere is still vulnerable. Scientists today openly admit that a sufficiently powerful eruption could once again darken the sky, cool the planet, and disrupt global agriculture. Modern technology might help us survive, but it cannot stop a volcano. In 536 AD, humanity witnessed something almost no civilization had ever seen before or since. A year when the sun seemed to fail. A year when crops died, kingdoms trembled, and death spread silently across continents. Historians now call it the worst year to be alive in human history. But for the people who lived through it, it wasn't history, it was the end of the world.